Anyways, happy Hytale stream day again. No, we only have 3 more of these before the game comes out. It's getting ridiculously close. Anyways, I'm over here on Twitter just looking at the at the newest little snippet posted. Hytale Factions. I'm going to give this the same premise, or preface, I should say, that I gave the previous stream, which is they have said that they are adjusting some of the lore, that they're revising some of it, that they don't know what will actually make it into the game. All we have to go off of is, you know, what we've been given through snippets and teasers so far, or concept art, and then theorize off of that. But as always, all of this is just speculation and just for fun. If you have theories yourself, let me know, because I would love to hear them. But we're going to get into everything that we know so far about the factions. If you're watching this on YouTube, there are other videos that I've done already that I will link in the description that go over all the big concepts about the world in terms of, you know, magic and deities and regions of the world and all of that sort of stuff. So if you want to understand that and you don't yet, then go ahead and watch those videos, because this is going under the presumption that you already know some of those things. But here's a little bit of the game iconography. We're going to be going back to a few of these things quite a few times, as a lot of it has to do with these factions, particularly these little elemental symbols, as they signify the elements that each of these regions of the world is based off of. And each faction does tend to have, you know, a little shtick with whatever element it represents. First off, I want to start with something that I actually missed in the last one that's also relevant to this, which is this over here, this little faction totem. We did magic last week, and I went over totems, but the only totem that we've ever actually seen or know of is a healing totem, and I completely missed this one. There's a faction totem. I don't know if this is a way to, like, represent your alignment to a different faction in the game, or, like, you know, who you're trying to help out on a quest or something like that, but it's here in some concept art. Again, who knows if it will make it into the game, but it looks like this would be something that you wear on your back to represent a certain faction that you're aligned with. At least that's my best guess. Now, we're starting off with the undead, just because that seems to span every single zone in the game. Every part of the game that we've seen, there are undead. We have a bunch of different types of them. I'll move my face just a little bit very quickly so you can see the archer here as well. We've got the archer, we've got the soldier, we've got wizard, frozen warrior, sand warrior. They do seem to shift a little bit depending on where they are. There's also a reference in some of the blog posts that there is a reason that they've both been stripped of life and are still animated. And in this concept art right here, we can actually see one literally coming to life, emerging up out of the ground. We see other concept art where there are caskets and coffins that are kept underground in ruins left by humans. And it does make me wonder if maybe some of them emerged out of those. I don't know if that's a little lore hint. But we can also see definitely those are, it looks like a little green Faren light, which makes me wonder if he has a role to play. But that doesn't seem to be accurate in the way that the skeletons are presently represented in the game, where they all have blue eyes regardless of where they are. And we can see them throughout all the different biomes in the game, all the different regions, and they seem to be imbued with this different elemental power depending on where they are, what zone they are. They've got these different jobs too. Here's some of the undead miners, and we can see that they still look like they're very able to actively participate in the job that they had in life, even here in death, which is really cool on just the living world note. These ones here even look like they're still guarding the place where maybe they lived when they were still alive. We can see that these humans must have been from a group that worshipped Gaia, as we can see this Gaian symbol on a lot of their buildings. We can even see that, let me skip ahead a little bit, in this bit of the 16-minute gameplay footage. I pointed this out in the last stream, I think, or maybe 2 streams ago, but I'll point it out again. We got a little flag back here. Let me boop, boop, boop. You see? A little Gaian flag. And we can see that in other ruins as well. Here is a very new piece of footage. This comes from a new image that I believe was given to Mine. His channel, along with others that I've used for research, will be linked down in the description as well if you're watching this on YouTube. But this is a statue of Gaia. We've seen these in concept arts. We've seen these in other parts of the game. Clearly, this rundown human town, when it was functional, would have worshipped Gaia as well. We can even see them in these Zone 3 images in front of what looks to be some sort of dungeon, where there are still the Gaian flags there out front in the both of these. And the humans, in addition to this, seem to have a lot of active mine posts left over. I don't know if that's where you get the undead miners coming in, but they do have a bunch of mines and dungeons still active that you can explore in the world. Kweebecs, one of my favorite factions. I know that I've touched on a lot of these creatures in previous streams, but we're going to go a little more in depth into everything that we know about their societies, how they work, how they function, their life cycles, all that sort of thing. And Kweebecs we have maybe the most amount of information on out of all of these different factions. So Kweebecs are these sentient plant creatures, basically, which makes sense given that they live in Zone 1, which is the zone that represents the element of Earth, and they are very, very connected to the Earth. Not only do they worship Gaia, but they quite literally come from and return to the Earth. We have a bunch of different pictures of their settlements. Here's one that's set up around a river. Here's another in the background. You can see it in this swamp. Here's another one where you can see some of their little treetop homes spread throughout this. Here's another one where they've got a series of docks that's very cute. We can see the old version of a Kweebec tree singer here. This is a little outdated. We'll get into that in a second. Here we can see a very large swamp home. It looks absolutely beautiful. And another one here where not only do we see one that looks a little pinkish, it's almost like a little cherry blossom Kweebec, which is very cute. I don't know if you guys know this. There is a link, I think at the Hytale wiki, to a cherry blossom biome page in Zone 1. I've not been able to find any other references for that. If anybody else has something or has any images or any reference in a blog post or something that I've not been able to find, I would love to see it, because that looks like where that would be from, but I've not actually seen any evidence that it exists, other than a couple words. In the back, we can also see what looks like a little chicken coop and some crops. There is some evidence that they do a little agriculture, which is odd, and we'll get to that in a moment. And then here we see the old version of all of their different life cycles. These are the old Kweebec models. They have been updated, but it looks like both the old and the new are going to be in the game as of early access. Who knows how that will develop over the course of time, but that seems to be what they're beginning with. So we also see, let me scooch my face a little bit so you can see more of this. But we can see a little bit about their homes here. We can see some of their food. We can see a little slingshot weapon. And then some of their homes that are built into the roots of trees or even go down beneath it. Very Hobbit-holy. Very Hobbit-like. I love them. I love them so much. And even the little pet rabbit. We've not seen any representation of this in any gameplay footage, but I really want them to have pet rabbits. Ever since I've seen this image, I really want them to have pet rabbits. Ignore the Glock, okay? In this footage that was released, we can see, I'll hover over it right here. I mentioned this before, but I'm going to mention it again. There's a little statue of Gaia right there that you can see on the side. So even in their treetop homes, they still keep to their goddess. Here is more updated art for the Kweebec life cycle. They begin as these little seedlings over here. They then progress into these young Kweebecs, then mature Kweebecs, and then this is the updated version of a Kweebec tree singer. I think I have a side-by-side later on so you can see. But they were updated to feel a little bit more like a tree that is making the conscious effort to still be mobile. And then they eventually root themselves and kind of go a little bit more dormant. And these little seeds that you can see on the tree eventually drop and become the seedlings, and the life cycle begins once again, which is just so cute. Here you can see some of these new models all lined up next to each other. Seedling, young, mature, and then we have the tree singer right here, which I love the design for. Here's another little image of all of them grouped together, all 4 of these models, and then we have some more specifics. So for the seedlings are how they begin their life cycle, and they are described as being the most energetic out of these life stages, which makes a lot of sense. The older they get, the more they slow down until they eventually root themselves and become a tree. These little guys are described as being very energetic, very mischievous, always getting into things. And then when they grow up into these young Kweebecs is when they get the thirst for adventure. So this is when they go out into the world, they begin to venture outside of their villages and explore what they would like to do, what sort of Kweebec they would like to be. And then we get these updated models. These are a bunch of different examples of how the Kweebecs can mature. Again, this is concept art. We don't know if all of these models make it into the game directly. We know that some of them do. I'll show you what we do have. But we have these warriors that they can become, or what looks like, I don't know, maybe some kind of smith over here with a hammer, and then some things that look very sage or shaman-like. A lot of these factions seem to have some type of shaman. And then we see this model. This is the model that we do have confirmed in the game. This is a Kweebec warrior with a, what is called a leaf blade over here, which is such a cool design. I love them so much. This is the old design for a tree singer. This is what they used to look like until they were updated to this. You can also see in this concept art, it looks like they're taking dye from flowers and dyeing these banners or ribbons that they're placing on top of the tree singer. And I don't know what the significance of that is. You can see that these guys have it draped around their necks as well. Maybe it's to signify that they've received information from this tree singer, because the idea here, if I go backwards, is that these rooted Kweebecs are not particularly communicative anymore. These younger ones are much more energetic, and so the tree singers are meant to bridge that gap between the two of them. They're meant to communicate things from the older rooted trees to the younger generations to help them then find themselves in what they want to do, who they want to be. And there's also been a reference to the fact that tree singers could sing to wood, and through that singing, basically mold it into certain shapes. Very Wheel of Time sort of mechanic if you've ever read those stories. There's something called, I think, tree singing in that sounds very similar, where they sing in this particular language in this particular way, and it literally molds part of a tree into what they want it to be. It's really, really cool. Then we can see that they do seem to have some form of agriculture going on. This is the odd thing, though, is that I don't know if this is just like to show how these things could work in game, or how you could set them up, how they could look, or if they just do it for fun, because the Kweebecs, from what we've seen at least, they don't eat, they photosynthesize. They just like take in, you know, sunlight and water just like a plant would. And yet we do see several places where they have these little coops or these little farms. Maybe they're just tending to the world. I don't know. We'll have to wait until we see what they're like in game. And then we have some images of them in other zones. This is in Zone 3, and I've mentioned this a couple times, but we kind of got some confirmation of it this past week. These are old images right here, but we're going to get to a new one. This is another old image where you can see, again, Kweebec Village in the background, and then you can see the Gaian statue in the foreground right here. And then this is the new one, another one that mine got this week, and you can see an Outlander ruin, or maybe old human ruin here, and then a Kweebec Village in the background, which makes it look like they are still very much inside of the game. And it's very intriguing to see how they will deal with the dangers of Zone 3. And we also got, the previous week, one of these bits of cosmetics that come with purchasing the game. This is called the Forest Guardian. Does make me wonder if there is a little bit of a hint in there, especially considered all of the moss and overgrown clothes, if you are meant to protect the Kweebecs, because they do need sometimes a little bit of protection from their rival faction, the Trorks. There's several different types of Trorks. We can see here we got the Sentry, Warrior, Hunter, Shaman, and Chieftain. It looks like the Hunter might have some ability to control wolves, as it looks like the wolves seem to be following the Hunter, and we see this reference here, Wolf Pet, which is a very cool dynamic that they've gotten here. You imagine being hunted by wolves through the woods? Terrifying. The Trorks, obviously, combination of troll and orc. They're meant to represent that kind of fantasy foe grunt. And they live in these very primitive structures devised out of hide and bone and wood. Much less kind to the environment than the Kweebecs, and you can see this parallel between them where the Kweebecs are working with the environment and they're part of the world and they're, photosynthesizing and singing to the wood and everything. And then you get the Trorks that are literally living inside of bones and the hides of animals, which is just their way of life. Another very interesting thing that I noticed here, I'm going to once again move my face for this so that you can see it better. It looks like in the background in this photo, you can see a couple of dangling carrots dangling on a rope, and beneath it, this brush. You can see the brush over here. It looks like it is covering the edge of a pit. It looks like what we're seeing here is that the Trorks have set up pit traps, potentially for rabbits, to catch them, which, if true, is super cool. That is an incredibly cool element to add into this world. Again, very living world, which is the goal of the game. Here we can see one on a platform, standing guard. And then we get to the video. All right, I'm going to quickly pause the music because there is music in this video. And we're going to just play. We're going to play it, and you're going to see. You're going to see. Watch and learn. So, if you don't understand what you've just witnessed, let me just go to the very beginning. See that cube? See that cube that he begins making the pizza with? And then do you see the leaf that he tops it with at the end? I'm just going to leave that there for you to look at, okay? Do you... Do you see the problem? Do you see the issue? Simon posted this with the caption included, "Don't let the Trorks win." He definitely made a Kweebec baby pizza. He definitely made a pizza out of a seedling, and then put the little seedling's leaf up on the top of it. Don't let the Trorks win. We've seen the Kweebecs seem to photosynthesize. The Trorks seem to eat whatever the hell they can. Moving on from the Trorks, we get the Knights of the Broken Order. This is purely speculative. However, I think I'm onto something, okay? I think I'm onto something. We get this concept art of these two NPCs. We have Tessa and Kairos. They both have the Gaian symbol on their clothes. They were both clearly a human representative of the Gaian faction at some point, and there seemed to be some sort of divide. And so Kairos ended up corrupted, and Tessa did not. Down with the Trorks, don't let them twerk on Mother Nature. I'm saying, don't let them twerk on Mother Nature. You get it. Those who know. Now, if we go over here, is this the right one? Is this the right? Ooh, it's not. But I forgot these. I forgot these for the Kweebecs. Look, we get all these Kweebec songs. Let me move them a little further down so you can see them around my face. But we get the we have the Way of Bark down there. We have the Family Walk. We have the Tree Singer Elegance, which is very cool. Secret Village, intriguing name. And then we have Moonlight Ceremony. I don't know what that would be in reference to, what ceremony that the tree singers could be performing. Maybe it's their communication from the elders down to the youngers. I don't know, but very, very interesting. Anyways, back over here, we go down a little bit. We will get to, I think it's beneath short form, Knights of the Broken Order. Here in the soundtrack. Again, I pointed this out before, but I'm going to point it out again for the purpose of this video. It looks like before there was a bunch of undead people living everywhere, there were actual live living humans, and that there was some sort of schism involving their allegiance to Gaia and to Faren, and that some ended up corrupted and some did not. And we can see that they seem to have, this faction of people, their own specific architecture. We can see in the zones, there are very zone-specific materials and building. We can see one a little bit in the background here. If you want to see more in this, check out the biomes and structures video. But these have a very different, not only architecture, but makeup. Like, the literal stones that they use on the building are different from everything else that we see in these zones. And that seems to be consistent when you follow them through to wherever they go, to these temples or gardens on the other side, where you are resolving the attack on Gaia by Faren. Her imprisonment, or the takeover of her world, the corruption. And so I'm going to guess that in the game, to address the corruption of Faren that's spreading throughout the world, there will need to be some sort of allegiance with the Knights of the Broken Order. Again, this is purely speculative, but it's clicking so solidly in my head. I know they're reviewing all the lore, so we really don't know what of this will end up in the game. And so we just get to kind of speculate for fun, but it makes a lot of sense to me that you would need to understand that dynamic and then ally yourselves with the people who stayed faithful to Gaia in order to address the corruption that's spreading through the world. Moving on, we get to the Farens in Zone 2. These are anthropomorphic fennec fox people. They're adorable, and I love them so much. We can see some of them are a little more peaceful. We get the warrior here with the bone mask and the weapon. We can see here in this concept art not only a little glimpse of what their structures could look like. We'll get into that a little bit, because I've been struggling to find things in these last few streams that look like they might belong to the Farens, but I think I might have found some stuff. The Farens also have these freedom bracers. Now, this was not implicitly stated, but I did get the impression that they are specifically reviewing some of the lore between the Scarix and the Farens, which may change the dynamics between these two factions. I'm not sure what that's going to look like, but currently what we understand of them is they have these freedom bracers, which reminds them of their freedom from their enslavement by the Scarix, which we're going to get into momentarily. We can even see that design on the little shield here, carved into the hide front of the shield here. And you can see that wind symbol here in the iconography for the game, as well as this Sand Empress iconography that we're going to get to in a little bit as well when we address the Scarix. Here is some concept art of these masks that the Faren wear. We have seen in Zone 2 there seem to be some antelopes and some saber-tooth tigers or lions of some sort, and it looks like they make some bone masks out of those animals. Presumably they would hunt them and then take the bones and turn them into a mask, which is pretty cool. We can see in this cosmetic demonstration here in the background, there are a couple structures, one up here and one down there. I'm thinking these are Faren structures. I'm really thinking these are Faren structures. They look like they're made out of wood and hide, which makes a lot of sense for what we know of the Farens, for the concept art that we saw over here. And this person is wearing bits of bone on them, which the Farens also do. So I'm really thinking this might be a glimpse of Faren huts. I have a few others that I think might be, however. We get this bit of cosmetic art as well. There's a little lean-to here. I'm less convinced about these, and I will tell you why. Because we also see them here, and this clearly looks, based on the stones here, that this is part of an old human ruin that this person has just set up camp in. Which is why I'm less convinced with those as a concept. But what we have seen is in these oases, there's a little, I don't know if you can see that very well, but there's a little lean-to back there. Which, if we go all the way back to the concept art, that looks like that thing in the upper right-hand corner there. It looks like a little lean-to. And it would make a lot of sense for the Farens to be living inside of one of the oases. I mean, what safer place to live, right? On this big landscape, this is also fairly old footage, so hard to say what of this would be represented in the game, but over in the corner, we're going to zoom in here. we can see a little structure off to the side here. It's got a very small fortification around it, and then this structure in the middle. It could be an old human ruin. It's definitely not a Scarrick ruin. There's no chance of that. Or a Scarrick home or hive or whatever, temple. But it could be a Faren home. It could be. But regardless, they are a little bit of a mystery. What we can see of them is actually a little bit more represented in the soundtrack. We can see they have a song called Art of the Dance. We can see that they have one for nomads, which they do seem to have a nomadic culture, where some of them look a little more settled potentially, but I mean, settled is relative when you're talking about lean-tos and hide huts. And then we have martial arts, and we have sand rangers, which I wonder if that isn't what we saw at the beginning, where there's that Faren that has a spear and the mask on. Going back over here, we get to our next faction, the Scarricks. The Scarricks are a little bit interesting because, similar to the Kweebecs, they have had an update to their game model. Also similar to the Kweebecs, it looks like both versions may coexist in the game. Again, it's hard to really say for sure or say what that will look like until we actually are in the game and get to experience it ourselves. But the Scarricks are these insectoid creatures. It states in a previous blog post that they are not a hive mind, but that they are some sort of alien sentience, and that they are meant to feel as though they've come from another world. If you watched the very first Hytale video on the channel from a few weeks ago, you would know that there's concept art of all these different worlds, in addition to the world where all of this takes place. And I wonder if these Scarricks don't come from one of those worlds. Again, all the lore is subject to change and they're reviewing it, but from what we know so far, it could really make sense if they have come through from another planet entirely, which explains their inability to seem to really get along with the creatures that are native to this world. We'll get into that a little bit more. Here's another image of them. These are down in their egg caves. That is right, they're egg caves that they have beneath their homes. They have egg caves. Those are the little glowing blue things. I will never forget the video in which they showed how they made the sound of the eggs in the game. If you know, you know. It's nasty. Here we can see a bunch of different versions of these creatures. I believe this is older concept art. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe this is from before the redesign was done. We can see they begin as the eggs, they progress into the larva stage, and then I would assume they branch off into whatever is needed, similar to ants, where it's kind of like whatever the hive needs, they turn into that, right? So we have the workers, we have the locusts, which we definitely have seen these. We have the warriors, and we have the tanks. You can even see over here, the tanks seem capable of placing their heads side by side, kind of like a shield wall, to protect themselves against enemies, which is a really cool concept. Over here is the redesign. I'm once again going to move my face so you can see that one over there. That one that my face was covering looks like it's extending out of a hole in the wall. Like it just slides out, which is terrifying. But these definitely have a little bit of a different affect to them. They're redesigned to appear even more alien. And it certainly works. I mean, we have multiple sets of wings, multiple sets of eyes. This one has two faces somehow. They look creepy. They look disturbing. Anybody who has a problem with bugs is going to have a hard time with the Scarricks. But here's a closer look at some of the game models for some of these redesigns that we have here, and then we get the concept art for the Scarrick architecture. One of the most interesting things here, and this goes back to the Sand Empress sigil that we talked about before, is that we have underground a big magic gate leads to the instance where the Sand Empress is imprisoned. We know that instances are more or less dungeons, and so it seems like there is some sort of portal downstairs, perhaps here in the crystal room, in which the Sand Empress is imprisoned. Now, the Sand Empress rune, or iconography, looks very much like a Scarrick. It looks insectoid, but the fact that it's imprisoned really throws me. Because then I'm like, okay, is the Sand Empress actually a Faren and they're tricking us? You can even see beneath this one that there are cells beneath this structure right here. This is specifically a prison. Again, unclear whether all the Farens are free now, or some are free and some are still imprisoned, and the ones that are free are celebrating their freedom with those bracers that they have, but something is going on with the Scarix and their seemingly incessant need to imprison people. We can even see the symbol of the Sand Empress literally constructed at the front of this building right here. And there seems to be a difference between these structures that are actually built out of stone, much more like a ziggurat. Oh, it even says it right there, like a ziggurat, versus their hives. So this is what one of their hives looks like. It's comprised of organic material. And I theorized before in my Biomes and Structures video that the Scarix seem capable of kind of changing the environment around them. We see them do this with their egg caves. They morph the caves into an environment where they can lay their eggs, and it just becomes part of the walls. We can see that they literally change the landscape where they live. I'm going to move my face again because it's over here. Not only that, but going back to what I said about their inability to coexist with other creatures around them, it is these regions where they've built the nest where we see the most giant skeletons. We see these a few other places in Zone 2, but the highest concentration of them has always been around Scarix nests, which seems to imply that they have destroyed some part of the ecosystem here in their takeover, which definitely has an even darker ring to it when you consider the fact that these creatures were, at least at some point in Hytale's development, intended to be invasive alien creatures. Here's another glimpse of the hive, and you can also see one of these little flying, I think they were called locusts in the design. We can see a couple of them out here. And then we get this concept art of somebody marching into a giant, it looks like a Scarix hive. This looks redesigned in the more alien fashion. And then we can see a Faren warrior who is standing watch. And we can also see in the soundtrack, we have some Scarix bits here as well. Scarix infiltration is particularly telling when we're talking about, you know, an alien force that's invaded this planet. Then we have sentries, swarm, and then trypophilia, which, if you didn't know, is the fear of a bunch of small holes, which makes sense considering that the eggs are a bunch of small holes. Disgusting. Is this actually not the place where it is? Is it on the other list? Let me see. I think it is over here, actually. Yes, because we get into Caravan, which makes sense for the Farens. We get into Scorching Sands, Enchanting Barrens, Canyon of the Many Suns, Uncovering Lost Secrets, interesting, Lasting Drought, also interesting. We have some Faren songs, Scarix Hives, Night on the Dunes, Memories of the Ancients, which is very interesting, especially considering the previous stream about magic and us addressing the memory mirrors for the first time and what you might be able to discover from them, followed by arcane discoveries. Are you kidding me? And then we have Rise of a Hero. So I have this theory in terms of Rise of a Hero, that you will have the opportunity in the game, presuming that they keep a similar dynamic between these two factions, the Scarix and the Farens, to help the Farens with their freedom. Now, this is obviously a delicate subject, so it makes sense that they're reviewing this in the lore and how they're approaching it and the player's role in it, but it does look like we get several hints, at least in the past development history of the game, that this is a dynamic that they had intended to carry through with. We will see what that ends up looking like in the actual game. Now, from above, we can see one of those regions where they have altered the landscape in their nasty little ways, and here we can see these high concentrations of these giant skeletons. We also see, this is from the 16-minute Breaking the Curse gameplay footage, there are some larger structures like this one here that definitely looks like it is a Scarix ziggurat. Maybe this is one of the places where the Sand Empress is imprisoned, where you can follow a portal down below into a dungeon where you'd be able to free her, whoever she is, whatever that does in the game. Your guess is as good as mine. This is also earlier art. I don't think it's that particularly old. I believe it's just a couple of years old. If you know better, please correct me. But this is a design regarding the Scarix and some sort of alien thing that they have instilled here at a cave, We've never really gotten an update on this or what it might be. It looks very egg-like, but we know that their eggs are in caves. However, we have seen this. This is in Zone 3. It is not in the same zone that the Scarix live, which is what really throws this theory, but I simply cannot escape the fact that these look so similar. So similar. And it's interesting that in this one, it's lined up right next to these plants that look very much like Faren corrupted plants. Again, what all of that means, I don't know. But if you have any guesses, if you have any ideas, or if you would like to see that represented in the game, let me know. Then we have the Outlanders. So we've addressed a few human-esque things so far. We have the skeletons that are obviously undead humans, and then we have the Knights of the Broken Order, which don't seem to be really strongly represented in the game. If those NPCs are in it currently, I don't think we've heard any reference. I believe Simon commented that they will be coming, but I don't know if they're in there presently. However, these humans, or mutated humans, I believe they're titled a breakaway human faction. They're very much in the game and are a very strong presence in Zone 3. As you enter Zone 3, the evidence of Faren's corruption begins to increase quite a bit, and the Outlanders seem to play a very significant role in that. They are these human-ish creatures. I don't know if I can actually straight up call them a human, but they are human-like. They used to be human. At the very least, they used to be human. We have a few different types of them. Let me move my face so you can see this guy a little bit better. But yeah, we have a few different types of warriors. And then we have a shaman that we will be getting to shortly. This is an overview of an Outlander town where Simon, the game owner, was running through, and you can see a bunch of death markers through here. The Outlanders seem to be a very significant threat, and their association with Faren and the power they derive from that seems to play a very significant role in that. They live in these icy wastelands out here in Zone 3, in these giant towers, and I wonder if some of these aren't just inherited from the humans that used to live here, and now this is what they live in, and they've kind of preserved it. We can also see that they run active mines, and they have these diamonds on their faceplates and their armor, and we can see that. Let me move my face once again. We can see that over here. This is the mark of Faren, not the evil contained, but just the evil right out front and center, visible to everyone. So, in their villages, you can see these tiny little hints of corruption that peek up through. And we can see, this is a really interesting thing that I found when I was scrolling through old blog posts. Here we can see the orange campfires and everything, and then here we see green. And we see the green a few other places in the game as well, but there was a reference in a blog post that their fires turn green, which if you didn't know, green is kind of Faren's thing, right? Their fires turn green at nighttime, which then definitely makes me think that their rituals also occur at nighttime. I would really love to see this transition appear in the game, because can you imagine? You're in Zone 3, you're trying to escape the Outlanders, the sun sets and everything glows green. That would be absolutely terrifying in the best way possible. Let me move my face again. This is an Outlander shaman with this staff right here. We mentioned this a little bit in the last video about magic, because the Outlanders have a very particular relationship with magic in this world. We can see that in their settlements there are, this is concept art of course, but we can also, like I pointed out, literally see this in the game where Faren's corruption is creeping around their buildings. They have a relationship with the water in the game. So the element of Zone 3 is water, and they seem to have this water imbued with Faren's power that they use for these sacrifices and necromantic rituals, where they seem to mutate themselves. And we can actually see this taking place. This is an underground room, and we can once again see those green fires and the shaman with the shaman's staff up here, who has an Outlander in the water, and then we see the final product right here. We get the symbol of Faren on the front and this horribly mutated person. We can even see that mutated arm referenced in one of the, blanking on the word, cosmetic images that we got this week. It seems like we get a little cauldron that has this void water too that we can collect inside of the game. I don't know what you'd be able to do with it, if you'd be able to imitate some of that necromantic magic that they have, or maybe if sacrificing something around it is able to activate its power. But we can see a bolt of very Faren colored lightning bursting into it here. And then lastly, inside of the Outlanders underground temple areas, whatever you want to call them, we have a couple images of this statue back here that obviously have the diamond symbol of Faren. We get one there, and we got one in this little screenshot that Simon posted a little while ago too. Then we have the Void, which I haven't included in here as a faction just because, I mean, it becomes so prevalent in the game as you progress through it. We've seen elements of this, I think, in every zone except perhaps Zone 4. Not to say it's not in Zone 4, we just haven't seen it, to my knowledge. But as we go through Zone 3, we get a lot more of this corrupted presence, which begins with the Void Eyes. These are very Cthulhu-esque flying multi-eyed creatures in Zone 3. I don't know if they can appear elsewhere, but they definitely seem to appear a lot here, and I'm very interested to see if the Outlanders have any sort of relationship with these or with other Void creatures that are in Orbis. When they are attacked and brought down to the ground, they seem to spawn these crawlers, which we've also seen in other parts of the game. We've seen them in a screenshot even all the way back in Zone 1. So they don't seem to be limited just to here, but they do seem to come to come to the defense of the Void Eyes. We also have these Faren spawn, which are referenced as being the strongest soldiers of Faren on Orbis. You can even see them down here in this Zone 3 image, and we saw them in Zone 3 in the Breaking the Curse gameplay footage. Here's another images of the crawlers, just so you can see what they look like real up close. They're literally just a torso and arms. That's kind of it. And there's something to do with their pallid skin that really looks very Outlander-ish. I have no proof. I'm just throwing it out there for the people to consider. Then we get to the Fawns. The Fawns are also one of my favorites just because they're so mysterious. I'm going to move my face here. This is the only concept art we've ever gotten of a Fawn. That's it. And yet people have been excited about them for years, and for good reason. They would be the opposing faction to the Outlanders. This is the only footage that we've ever seen of them in-game. This is all we have, is this grainy, blurry little image of them. If the Outlanders have this negative relationship with water and the magic of Orbis, I would love to see the Fawns have a positive one, where they can somehow utilize some sort of water magic in order to combat the presence of the Outlanders, or maybe to try to keep the forest safe or try to heal the plants inside of it. Imagine water magic as a source of healing for the plants and creatures that are being corrupted inside of the forests in Zone 3. That could be a really cool dynamic to see. The other interesting thing, I don't think this means anything, it just caught my eye, is that we actually see some of their symbols represented in a couple other areas of the game. So if I flip forward a little bit, these are the Fawns runes right here. This one in particular in the middle is what I'm looking at right there. You can see that represented in the architecture in this block right here, which here is being used to build in Zone 1. It definitely looks like those tan Zone 1 blocks, but it's very interesting that it has the Fawns symbol here as well. We can also see it on this cosmetic work that was done and is being released with some versions of the game here. You can see it on the hat and on the gloves and boots as well. In Zone 3, we also get the moss horns. We've seen no evidence that these two interact, but I just want to throw it out there. Hytale devs, if you make Fawns ride moss horns like it's their mount, like they use them as horses, I'll marry you. I'll give you all my money. I'm just saying. But We also see in Zone 3, in the forest, this little glimpse of a corrupted Kweebec. Again, I'm just very interested to see if the Fawns have any sort of relationship with dealing with the corruption, because imagine the Kweebecs trying to live in Zone 3 when it's a lot more hostile, and the Fawns are living there as well, and they both seem to have some sort of relationship to nature and nature magic. I just think there's a lot of potential there. I'm very excited about it. Then we get the Slothians. In Zone 4, we don't actually have an evil faction to combat the good. We have dinosaurs and we have skeletons. Neither of them have struck me very much as a super cohesive, solid faction. The top of Zone 4 is this fiery, devastated wasteland, and as you progress down through the caves, they get more and more lush until you reach the Slothians. It seems like they potentially live on a couple different levels of the cave systems. We can see the Slothians here in what is probably an upper level of the cave, as you can still see some shafts of sunlight, and there isn't a lot of color to the life here, but down below we get this beautiful bioluminescence. The Slothians seem to have a very interesting culture. They live in these bamboo buildings built in the bottom of these caves. What an alliteration. And they live alongside literal bioluminescent dinosaurs. You can see this little Slothian right here and this dinosaur over here. But they do seem capable of dealing with it. We see here, this is a very recent image. So this is much more indicative of what the game actually looks like and how it works. They have training ranges. We've seen multiple of these in images and videos that we've gotten about the game. The Slothians have training ranges, which makes sense when they are literally living alongside dinosaurs. And they've got this armor here. Very interested to see how they interact with those creatures and how that's developed over the course of the game. And of course, there's been so many theories about the Slothians and potentially their ability to ride on dinosaurs and use them as a mount, which would be absolutely epic. Or maybe there's specific types of the dinosaurs that are more easy for them to tame. Again, all speculation, but it would be really, really cool to see. If we go back over here, we're going to backtrack just a tiny little bit. What am I looking for? What am I looking for? I don't think this is what I'm looking for. Oh, we do see this, though. This is in the Zone 4 section of this soundtrack here, A World Below, which makes a lot of sense for Zone 4. You break down beneath the devastated lands, you get this beautiful dungeon. See? Deep jungles and sloth village and among the bamboo, which all represents what's going on down there in Zone 4. Now, if we back up a little bit, back to the Outlanders. Again, I mentioned this in a previous stream, but I'm going to come back to it before I forget about it. Outlander Sacrifice, Outlander Chains, Outlander Death March. They do seem to have some sort of power over sacrificial and necromantic magic, which does make me think they're doing some sort of ritual, sacrificing stuff there in order to gain power from Faren and mutate themselves into these big, terrifying creatures, which you can see here. Outlander Monster and Outlander Morphosis, which if you don't know means transformation. And we have Heretical Plot and Mutated Fanatics, which also falls exactly in line with what we have seen so far, as well as demonic tension and ascension. Interesting. Very interesting. We have our void bits, our mage bits, and then do we have anything else for the Slothians? I don't actually think that we do. I think the only reference to the Slothians in terms of soundtrack is Sloth Village right here and among the bamboo. So they remain a little bit of a mystery compared to some of these other factions that we have. How they survive down here, what they want, their relationship to Gaia, we don't know. But it would be really cool, I think, to get down here and see them have some Gaian statues themselves. Or maybe they have a particular relationship to fire. Maybe fire plays a role in how they tame and manage the dinosaurs. That would be a really, really cool thing to see, especially given that the dinosaurs have bioluminescence and presumably would respond to the bioluminescence of others. Then having the Slothians using light to try to manipulate their relationship with them would be fascinating, especially with the living world goal of Hytale. Here's a couple little other pictures of the dinosaurs and the jungle that they live in. And then we have the goblins. The goblins we've seen the most of beneath Zone 1, but there is some evidence to suggest that they are beneath other zones as well. They seem to have taken up residence in a lot of old human structures that they now live within. We can see them in a lot of dungeons underneath the world and coming up out of a lot of dungeons. Here in this zone art, we can actually see a little one of those dungeons over here, as well as it looks like a big old troll up there. And I wonder if they don't have some relationship between the two of them. Only time will tell. We'll have to see. But we do have this concept art from them as well. We have the casket that I referenced earlier, perhaps having some sort of relationship with the undead and them emerging out of them. And we can see over here, we've got Goblin in Human Ruins is how this concept art is labeled. And we can see it says beds made of tables and goblins bring home everything. So they are real collectors. And I would love a dynamic in the game where the goblins have the chance to steal little things from you. And then you have to go and get them back and maybe potentially have the opportunity to find this big treasure trove of other things that you didn't even know they had down there. The goblins, despite their odd nature of just living inside other dead people's homes, seem to be weirdly advanced in their own ways. They have gunpowder, they have explosives, they can blow things up. You can see this guy even has like goggles to protect his eyes as he's throwing this bomb. This guy here is juggling bombs. He has a backpack. This is a backpack of bombs, to be clear. And he's juggling some of the bombs. We can see another one here. He's thrown a bomb at the player. Again, similar to right here. He's got a whole backpack full of bombs. And then we can see some down here. Once again, some that have bombs, and then a couple that have pickaxes, and they have candles atop their heads. This is a thing that you can see in some older outfitting for miners, which you can also see in the undead miner design that's at the beginning of this stream, where they had lanterns on their helmets that would let them see in the mines. And so these goblins have candles on top of their heads that would let them see while they mine, which makes a lot of sense. If they are making explosives, then they would need to be mining for those materials. Which again is really cool to see the thought behind these goblins and their lifestyles. They're not even a primary faction from what we've seen, and yet they still have the amount of thought put into them that this is how they get these materials, this is how they live their life, this is what they do with those materials, and it's just very cool. It's very rich, very dynamic. Here we see something that looks like it is potentially a mini-boss situation. There's been a few references to the game having a couple okay dungeons, and then the rest are rather empty and underdeveloped. And potentially this is a look at a functioning dungeon where you have a huge treasure trove here with a bunch of goblins and this big goblin boss at the pinnacle right here with all of this wealth that he is sitting on top of. And if you get a good look up close, you can see he even has some burning bottles that look very like Molotov cocktail style here. A really cool design. And then we can even see him here off to the side. This, based on the rocks and bits that we can see, these decorative bits, this is a cave at the very base of Zone 2, which again suggests that these goblins are not just limited to Zone 1, but can show up below ground in other zones as well. Maybe with different frequency. Only time will tell. But that is all we've got. That's all we've got today. These are all the factions that we know of in the game so far. If you think I missed anything or got anything wrong, please let me know. And if you watched this on YouTube and enjoyed the video, then maybe give it a like and a comment or a little share and a subscribe. We are every single week up to the release of the game. We are posting a new stream, a new video about some element of the game. If you want to be involved in that decision-making process, go subscribe to the VOD channel. And if you didn't know, there is a main channel that I have as well that is getting a new video, I think in like a couple days. We're reviving it. It is the first time it's been active in over a year, and I'm very excited to come back to it. And if you've been watching this on Twitch and you haven't followed, then maybe hit the follow button, because what could go wrong? I'll see you guys soon. Happy almost Hytale. It's coming. It's practically here.